It's quite a lovely place to sit and practice, and in this very powerful contemplative environment of the retreat center. So, gentle background like the wind. You might be hearing the traffic. In the morning sometimes we hear the traffic of Highway 17, not over the hill, and some of the windows are open because we have about 40 people living together here during COVID time, so we're having windows open, and so it's probably you're hearing that. So the camera is out of focus. No sound suddenly. Static stopped when you started talking. So the camera out of focus. Well, we'll look at that tomorrow, but hopefully. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to say about this Satipatthana, the knowing quality, is that one of the things what's supporting our mindfulness is having a very simple reference point. So, for example, the classic example is that of a white piece of cloth that, or canvas or something, that if it's full of stains, one more stain you wouldn't notice. But if that white cloth is completely clean and you put one more stain on it, you will notice it. And or if you have a chalkboard that is full of writing on it, packed full of writing, you might not notice that someone writes something else on it. But if it's completely clear, the blackboard, then you'll see clearly, if someone scribbles something on. So, if a person is really agitated, they might not notice that their mind is now agitated with something new. It's just all the same. But if the mind is calm, then they might notice that the agitation begins. So to have a reference point, we see ourselves better. And this is what one of the benefits of this simplicity of knowing. Simplicity of knowing, and so just to know that you're sitting, just to know that there is a body, which is one of the statements in the Satipatthana Sutta. To have knowledge just enough to know that there is a body, to know that you're sitting, might not seem very profound, but it highlights when we can't do that, when we can't sit still and we're agitated and fidgeting. We notice that we don't just see the body, we're caught up in our preoccupations. So this simple knowing of breathing works the same way, that we might not be successful at staying very long with the breathing, but we can, if the mind, we're more likely, because of this reference point of breathing, we're more likely to notice if the mind wanders off. And then we practice simple knowing of that. And the simple knowing is a reference point for when we have complex knowing, when we know something with judgments and evaluations and a lot of thinking, commentary. So, assuming a meditation posture, and gently closing your eyes, and just a simplicity of sitting here quietly, the eyes closed. Does that highlight something about how you are that you might not have noticed if you hadn't stopped? noticing how you are in your body, in your mind, in your heart, and how simple or how complex is your knowing of that. Chances are the more complicated the knowing, the more you're caught up in it, caught in thoughts and preoccupations. The simpler the knowing, the more freedom there is. And then settling down into the experience of your body breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. And if anything makes it difficult, just be resting in the simplicity of the body breathing. Know that. Experiment with it to see how simple you can know it. And then whenever you're ready, return to your breathing, or allow the experience of breathing to return to a simplicity of knowing, settling in, relaxing into the experience of breathing. On one hand, you can notice when it gets complicated. On the other hand, as you simply know it, the experience of breathing becomes more intimate, more embodied in awareness. With this, as awareness gets simpler, our perceptions can become clear here in the present moment. How simple are you with what is? How complicated are you with what is? And can your knowing be simple? Even if things are complicated, can you in a sense step back and just know complication? Always returning to simple knowing. can the simplicity of breathing highlight ways that you're not simple? Highlight how you enter into more complex worlds of thoughts, ideas, feelings. And when you see that you've gotten complicated, can you take refuge in a kind of simple knowing? Knowing of the complexity. That's all. Knowing, thinking, feeling, whatever it might be, how simply can you know it? And as we come to the end of this sitting, a simplicity of being, simplicity of knowing, can be a refuge of safety, and when the knowing is calm and peaceful, it's a refuge of calm and peace. There might be other things happening which are agitated, even within us. But to take refuge in the simplicity of calm knowing. And then when we live in a world of agitation, a world of complexity where people are spinning out and not really present for themselves, may our refuge in simple knowing, simplicity of presence, be a support for others. May we make ourselves a refuge for this world, as we find a refuge in ourselves. May we somehow be a refuge, a place of safety for those who meet us, encounter us. May we be a refuge that supports the happiness of all beings. May we be a refuge that provides safety to everyone. May we be a refuge that offers the world peace, a peaceful presence. And may we be a refuge that supports the freedoms of others. If nothing else, people feel that they're free from us when we're present with them. May all beings, may all people be happy. And once again, in being in a new place, and all the preparations to set this up, I didn't get a bell close enough to hit, to ring. So I will bow to end the sitting. Thank you. So we've started the discussions of the second exercise of the Satipatthana Sutta, the one that goes very simply. When walking, one knows one is walking. When standing, knowing one is standing. Sitting, one knows one is sitting. Lying down, one knows one is lying down. In whatever way the body is positioned, one knows that. And so it's very easy to just skim over this, because most people can master this one very quickly, to know they're standing when they're standing, and they're ready to go off to do something else. But to really center oneself in this knowing has all kinds of benefits. But the one I'm going to focus on today is that how it can be a reference point for how we don't want to be there, in just the simplicity of that, and where the momentum, where the impulses are, where the life force is going for us, in a way that maybe is not always healthy for us, or doesn't express a lot of our freedom. So, for example, standing in the market in line for the cashier, to just center oneself, standing, I know I'm standing, and to really know that, and not only know it with words, but know it feeling-wise, know it in embodied knowing. Just stand there and then breathe with that, and be with the standing. And it could just be for a few seconds, and then you might notice that there's this really strong pull, desire, impulse to read the front covers of the magazines that are there for you. And or maybe you're a very strong impulse to look and see what other people are buying and comment on it in your mind. Or maybe you notice only then how impatient you are, and you're actually crowding the person in front of you a little bit, because you're somehow eager to get on with it. And without the reference point of a simple way of just, I know that I'm standing, we see that we can't just stand. We want to do more. We're engaged. There's impulses there. Walking, to just walk and know you're walking, and that's all you're doing. It might highlight how you're walking in a hurry, you're leaning forward, or you're tense, or it might highlight how you're walking, or you might highlight the fact that you're hardly noticing your surroundings or noticing yourself walking because you're in some kind of reverie or in some kind of preoccupation or anxiety. And none of these things is wrong that we're doing that takes us away from the simplicity of what we're doing in the moment. But the path of mindfulness is to know it, to be mindful of it. So to really know, there's a desire to look at the magazine covers. There's a desire to move forward. I'm impatient. And to know that with the simplest, clearest, freest kind of knowing you can. And that becomes one of the kind of premier reference points, is simple knowing. Can we allow ourselves a calm, simple knowing of what's happening? Or is the mind racing ahead, wanting to do things, wanting to pick things up, wanting to get involved? It can't just stay centered and settled. And standing in line in a market, it's not the end of the world to just stand there and breathe and be present. And so you can feel how there's lack of freedom, and how we're kind of maybe crowding the other person, looking at that cashier, trying to calculate how quickly they'll be done. It's not going to change anything probably for you to do that, but you can see the way we've been caught in it, and it has us in its grip, that kind of concern. Walking the same way, we can see what's the complexity of it. And the beautiful art of this is that no matter how complicated the mind's preoccupation is, no matter how complicated the situation we're in, there is always some capacity to know it in a simple way. And one of the labels, ways of knowing that I have is that covers it all, no matter how complicated it is. I'll just tell myself, knowing chaos. This moment I know that it's chaotic. And I don't know the details of the chaos necessarily. I don't understand all of it. I'm not trying to evaluate it or study it or fix it. I just, chaos. And that knowing of that keeps it really simple. And then there are times when I've used that knowing of chaos, and then I take the moment then to, because I know it, now I can take it in and perceive it more fully as chaos. And then I start seeing almost naturally, without losing that simplicity, I notice some of the details of it. I notice that the chaos is primarily physical agitation in my body. And so now it's simply knowing physical agitation. And as I'm with that in a simple way, then at some point it becomes clear that there's anxiety. And the anxiety is this. And so it kind of begins to be more specific, but not because I'm investigating and questioning and wondering what's happening. It's just that I'm relying on the simplicity of knowing for things to become clear. And if we have a simple knowing where we just allow ourselves to be with what's happening, then clarity begins to appear on its own. So it becomes a refuge, the simple knowing. It's a reference point for freedom. Because in the simplest knowing, the knowing happens in a very free way. The knowing is independent of what is known. So, if I see the magazine covers on the rack at the market, I can recognize some exotic title of an article, and I can just know it. Look at that. There's a title. And as opposed to being horrified or fascinated or eager to kind of get involved or start judging and how could they. And when I start getting that complicated, I can notice, I've lost myself in the complexity. I've lost myself in the feelings, the desires, the drives that I have. There's not freedom there. But to have the knowing be free then is a reference point. So this teaching's about when walking, know you're walking, standing, know where you're standing, sitting, know you're sitting, lying down, know you're lying down, can function this way that it helps bring more mindfulness, more attention to what's going on for us beyond the simplicity of it, of just standing and walking. And if nothing more is going on, if it's really easy just to stay close to walking when you're walking, sitting when you're sitting, standing when you're standing, and lying down when you're lying down, then just enjoy yourself. Just sit there and breathe and be there breathing and walking and feeling and being connected to the experience. It's a fantastic pleasure to do so. And if you make it more complicated than that, know it. That's the case. And then with that knowing, perhaps there's also some wisdom where you realize I don't have to spend my time looking at the covers of magazines when I have something better to do. I can just stand here and breathe and be present. Or maybe you realize maybe I should get a magazine. A friend of mine is ill. I know my friend likes that particular kind of magazine. It's a nature magazine, and maybe I'll buy it for my friend. That's a little more complicated, but it comes from a very different place. So in the refrain that we covered, the very end of it said, one is mindful, there is a body just to what's necessary for knowledge and lucid or clear awareness. And here we have again this very simple thing. There is a body. And the text, the Satipatthana Sutta, goes from that refrain to the second exercise, where it remains that simple. And it'll get, as we develop this, then this simplicity of practice, it opens up. And we become aware of a little bit more complexity. But we hopefully have learning how to be aware of more and more complexity, or more and more kind of richness of the moment. We know it in this simple way. And this simple way maybe is not so cognitive always. It might not be a label or a word that we say, like chaos or sound or something, but it might be a quieter knowing that is closer to kind of just experiencing it. So I think that's my words for today, and I'm enjoying going through this Satipatthana slowly, step by step, and so we'll continue, and take refuge in your knowing. Experiment and explore what it's like to be simple, a simplicity of being with whatever is happening, a simplicity of knowing with whatever is happening, and see what shows itself. So see what clarity there comes. And the reason to experiment with that and explore that in the next day or two is that the mindfulness will get a little bit more complicated, a little bit more involved, slightly, and so having this ability to have a refuge in knowing and keep it simple, always to keep back to the simplest knowing, simplest awareness of it all, is such a powerful support as we go through the entire Satipatthana. So, thank you very much.